and welcome to this week's look at action and stunts on film and television. Yeah, we're back. Bit of hiatus, but purely it had nothing to do with a break. We weren't having a rest. We were having a mental breakdown is what was happening. Technology-wise, everything fell apart, but we're back. It's taken longer than planned. So when you come back, you want somebody to tell you, I'll be back. And that's exactly what we're doing this week. We are looking at the 1991 classic starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, and the little fella, Eddie Furlong. And it is the wonderful Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I've had a lot of requests for this since we've been away. I must thank everybody for their continued support. I must also thank those 700 people who decided to join and subscribe to the YouTube channel in my absence. It's very gratifying. Thank you for that. And hopefully, and some of those people had said, you know, Terminator 2, that'd be great if you could do that. Well, here we go. You know, we're going to have a look at this. Terminator itself and the Terminator 2, there's a huge difference between one and the other, but the practicalities of the action remain the same. That's never really changed as far as that's concerned. They've had the technology of CGI, which has allowed them to do more in the second picture and subsequent other pictures after that. But it's a real physical film. Lots of practical stunts. We're going to take a look at some of them now, and they go very much like this. So, here we go. A huge fireball explosion that leads to the title. Always love this in the cinema. Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Lots of bits and pieces. We'll have a little dive into this, shall we? We'll start with the opening battle. Vic Armstrong, of course, responsible for directing this. James Cameron gave him an opportunity to do this. There's a series of shots here which are Stan Winston models, backplates, miniatures, live action. It's just colossal. Many of the action pieces here. There's a great Jeep roll, I remember. A truck comes along, which we'll catch here in just a moment. But there's layer upon layer upon layer of new stuff. It's fascinating. And then that's back projection there. There's a model coming through, and they're seamlessly blending all this together. Here's the truck, which gets nicely cannoned over, I seem to remember, with the explosions coming down, the constant fire. And it turns and boom, over it goes. Look at that. A cracking job. But it's one of those, it stays with you. You know, this is a very, very important sequence in the picture, setting everything up for what is to come along. Very clever. Let's have a look at some of the doubles here. So, out through the windows, you know, Joel KRAMER doing some of the work there as well. And then they get a number of opportunities to run with this, constantly flipping through. I don't remember that sequence. It's our doubles. Eddie Furlong's double. Peter Kent there. Cheryl Wheeler, no longer with us, sadly. Doubling Linda Hamilton. And of course the truck versus the bike, which is that major sequence. When this whole thing comes through, that's Eddie waiting. Here's the truck. Bang! Down it comes. They built all of that, of course, to be able to smash it through. The landing's great. Look, the double's right there. And it just starts to veer off, and then they cut back to the chase itself. Number of doubles working with the motorcycles. This is Gary Davis, stunt coordinator, who's now working everything out to the last detail with his wire team. And the rigging on this is unbelievable. They've got to work everything out to the last detail. There are moments when you've got one double who is slightly taller than the other, so you put him on a bigger bike. Just the perspective of the whole thing. We've covered perspective before. There is a video there if you want to check it out. But the perspective of that gives the impression it's the same guy. You don't lose anything. One of them is a 100cc bike. One of them's a 70cc bike, I think. So you don't lose anything on it. And you wouldn't question it. Now, Eddie Furlong, of course, is being dragged behind a vehicle on a rig, as they all are in this. And then waiting for that cue to go. Right, go. And then the pickup shots behind. Having to mimic the movement of the actor. It's very important that you become the character for that moment. This is the big sequence. Peter Kent riding the motorcycle comes down. It's 13 feet. Bang, there's the sparks. And this is how they did it. They got a wire rig, crane to crane, one side to the other, enabling that vehicle to make the jump. If you don't have that cable on it, it's going to be very messy. You don't need that. So they work it all out to the last detail, and they keep doing it and hitting the same mark over and over and over again. The guys lie down, out of shot, just slightly back heavy. The second bounce is the one that catches me. But it works, you know. Works. It's very, very impressive. And the final edit, just slowed down slightly, but enough to get away with it. And then the truck itself, which hurtles. Second take, of course, they didn't get it right the first time. So that truck needs to go in that direction, and that will then, in turn, pull it. Because that's the mechanism you're using. There's no driver in this. You can't afford to risk it. It's too difficult, too risky. When they start to pull it through shot, one drives off to the left, out of shot. This is then being pulled towards the point of no return, and it crashes through and lands down there. It was beautifully done. And it just starts, you see the top of the shot there, it just starts to rest up the top of the bank and then slide back down. But all of that was created, so they built that. And that's where it's ended up. And then you put it all together in the edit, and that sequence just works. Now what we should do is we should listen to stunt coordinator Joel KRAMER as he explains his very important role.
Stunt coordinator's role is to actually bring the director's concept of the action to life. You're dealing with the wardrobe to make sure they have the right kind of clothes for certain types of protection. Make sure that the set was right. Make sure that it's padded here, or it braces behind a breakaway wall, or weakened a little bit over here. Make sure there's no slippery surfaces so where they can lose their footing. You're dealing with the special effects department, telling them what you need. Cars built a certain way, what type of explosives you want to use. Stunts and effects work hand in hand. And Tommy Fisher, he's knowledgeable, he's safe. And when it comes to designing rigs, he's done it for so many years that it makes me feel comfortable. The effects crew basically builds anything that you need specialized for a car, for a wreck, explosives and bullet hits. And I'll draw out diagrams for saying, well, you can do it this way or that way. This is more expensive, but you'll get better footage, you know. And working with Jim, it's great because it makes my job much easier with a director that understands physics and action. So we did a lot of extensive testing on that to make sure it was going to come out. From casting stunt people to playing parts, to casting doubles, it's a 24-hour job, especially on a high-octane picture like Terminator 2.
So this is the sequence that we got a brief glimpse of earlier, that motorcycle jump. This is Lane Levitt riding the motorcycle up the stairs. It's an adapted bike, and coming out through the window here, and it will crash and land on the helicopter. Doing it this way, you break the sequence down. You have to. And it's very important to understand the complications of it. And this is just a remarkable moment where stuntman Bob Brown comes pouring out of the window. He's harnessed and is then dragged using what we now know as a ratchet down into a box rig. There it is, Terminator 2 Judgment Day from 1991. Lots of extraordinary stuff. The wire work is phenomenal. You know, it's really, really important to remember that even back then, you looked at the motorcycle landing and yeah, you went, there's something not quite right about that. And it's that second bounce, isn't it? It's the way that the cable has kicked in and just given a bit more tension and brought the wheel back up again. But the sparks are there upon landing, and they did that on a number of occasions. 20 or 30 times they just kept coming off the top and bang, hitting the same spot over and over again. It was target jumping, and they were absolutely right. Gary Davis, of course, a remarkable motorcycle man, and was more than aware to go, look, we can't do this for real. It's the weight of the motorcycle. You have a Harley Davidson. It's a much, much tougher bike to handle. Having said that, Evel Knievel was using Harley Davidsons in those days of, some of his big jumps. But a jump of 13 feet doesn't sound very much, but when you're traveling at that speed and you have to take off and land at a certain point, when that landing would take place, if you did it for real, the pegs would come off, the foot pegs would come off. Chances are that Peter Kent would have disappeared through the floor as the remaining part of the bike would have come up. That's not pleasant. I mean, you wouldn't want that at the best of times at all. Suspension, all the whole 9 bits. But the bike, it's made beautifully, but it would have fallen apart from the sheer weight of impact. So they have to do something about it. They create this wire rig system. And so successful was that they then do it again on a much bigger scale, of course, for the truck arriving into the canal, the gully there. And again, very the practical thinking of the whole thing. It is being pulled on a wire. There's a vehicle that's travelling that way, and when that travels that way, that goes that way. And it just counterbalances itself, and the truck then disappears off the edge. And it's cracking. And the stunt double is there in the alleyway waiting for this thing to come down so that they can get that front-on shot of him reacting and then riding away for the second shot when it's all cut back together again. It's beautifully done, it really is. So some terrific stuff there. I hope you've enjoyed that. I certainly have. The actual practicalities of this means that when this is out, this particular show that you are watching now, on the Friday, I will be in Sweden. I'm at the Light Till Dark Festival. It's a film festival in Örebro in Sweden, and I'm doing a stunt panel with a number of luminaries from Sweden and from Finland and from the UK. I'll put up some details. There'll be a link in the YouTube page down the notes at the bottom. If you're in Sweden, if you're in Sweden and you fancy coming along and having a listen to a little stunt panel that we're doing prior to the viewing of a number of terrific films during the course of that particular week, then do so by all means. That would be lovely. So I will be away next week. There will be stuff, don't worry. So you'll see this. This is me now. You're watching me live, but actually I am in Sweden when this takes place. The magic of YouTube and television as we know it. The week after, we'll be back with more of the same. Little rundown of what's happened. I've got some footage to do. I've got some recordings to do, and lots of videos and stuff, which will be great. I hope you'll enjoy that. And until next time, it's bye for now.